Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to the third and last IHT webinar that we are running. Just to recap, my name is Phil Thompson. I'm the Regional Director for Central England. Just to recap, in our first webinar, we looked at the April 2026 and the business relief challenges that were announced in the 2024 budget, including the £1 million allowance and the impact on AIM portfolios and subsequent transition strategies. Last week, we looked at the basics and beyond and how business relief fits into a broader IHT tax strategy with insights into layering tools like gifting, trusts, pensions and life assurance for high net worth clients. Just to add, we had a significant response with inquiries from advisors on the back of last week's webinar, which I think reflects the complexity of the planning options that IFAs have on their desk at the moment. Again, the team at Deepbridge are happy to help with any expert comment and solutions where we can. So today we're looking at IHT for the next generation, and in particular looking at the Deepbridge Estate Planning Service as a future-ready estate planning solution, and highlighting the strategic role of renewables as they now power 46% of the UK electricity, and looking at the policy tailwinds driving the sector growth. As usual, we must point out that the investments in this sector are illiquid and carry up risks, but as long as we bear that in mind, we shan't go too far wrong. So today I'm delighted to be joined by two guests. Firstly, Andrew Hughes, who is one of the partners at Deepbridge and heads up to our renewables proposition. And secondly, Ian Warwick, our founder and managing partner. So welcome to you both.
Morning.
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 As we go through today's session, if anybody has any questions for Andy or Ian, then please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the page, and I'll endeavour to get them in over the next 30 to 45 minutes that we have. So let's get started with some questions that we've had already via the website. Firstly, I think it's important, Ian, people don't know how Deepbridge started and your role in that and renewables. So could you just give us a bit of a history about where we started?
Yeah, I'll try and be succinct because I can waffle on for quite a bit of time. Deepbridge has been around now. We're in our 16th year of operations. My background was tech investing in the US. I was an operator, not a fund manager, so I ran Nasdaq listed tech companies. So that's how Deepbridge started, was a way to utilize all those skill sets and people. I'm focusing on renewables more specifically. So an old colleague of mine at that time was a gentleman called Dr. Franz Hammerschmidt, who was a German lawyer, and he was one of the first people to really get moving in renewables way back when. And Franz, I'm very grateful to, because he mentored me in renewables for quite a while. I spent some time traveling with him, particularly to Italy, where we looked at solar opportunities. And Franz actually lived in Canada. And we were looking at the time at how we could work within the renewable sector. Bear in mind, at this time, I had no idea about the Enterprise Investment Scheme or BPR or anything of that nature, having been in the States for 15 years. It was purely looking at renewables as an asset class. Unfortunately, after meeting Franz in Italy, he returned to Canada and passed away. Very sad. He wasn't that old. He had a heart attack. And that kind of stymied our ability or our plans to move into renewables at that time. Subsequent to that, we had a particular IFA in Manchester who had a client who was looking for a solution, having sold his business. And I think we were the only provider who walked into the room without a predefined plan for this guy. And we sat and listened to what he required and what he was trying to achieve. And we asked for a little bit of time to go away and consider what he was trying to achieve. And at that time, renewables was still qualifying under the Enterprise Investment Scheme. Now, the amount of money he wanted to invest was outside that, but he could still benefit from the cap gain relief or the inheritance tax planning part of it. So, and he also liked the fact that his money was perceptually at a much lower risk than doing normal investing, and it would pay him a reasonable dividend per year. So we built a proposal for that gentleman. He invested a substantial amount of money, and we built him a wind farm. So that was our first step into renewables. Following that, we launched a wind EIS, which was Deep Renewable Energy One, which was quite successful. And then, as always, the government likes to change the rules, and wind was disallowed, but they left us with hydro, which kind of made some sense, really. And so we had a hydro product, and we moved into that sector as well. Ultimately, EIS relief was removed from anything asset-backed, which we were an advocate of. So we kind of cut our own throats, really, because we believe that EIS money should be going into risk investing and not into asset-backed. So
Yeah.
we were part of the process of putting the death knell in renewable energy for EIS. However, Logic and the team here believed that this would make an extremely suitable product for business relief and for estate planning. Hence, that's how we ended up doing BPR and estate planning in renewable energy.
Excellent. Well, I think a lot of advisors will be very well informed now about where we started. So thank you for that. Obviously, the renewables in the UK is, there's quite a few propositions out there. Why does the UK renewable sector is particularly attractive for BR and IHT planning purposes? Either Ian or Andy for that, don't mind.
Yeah, I'll jump in to start. I think it's particularly attractive for many reasons. One is it's out with the normal AIM listed shares marketplace, and we all have our opinions on the validity of AIM as a market. It's been under serious pressure for a number of years. This is obviously private company investing. It's an operating business which qualifies for BPR, and we've never been challenged on that. In fact, the product is proven. So I think it's attractive. It's attractive as well because we invest in physical assets. So the operating company own physical assets, which is particularly attractive. So, we have in the past run hugger turbine trips to Northern Ireland. I think it was more about drinking Guinness than hugging turbines, but anyway, it's quite enjoyable. So we do have physical assets. So we're not lending money. We're not borrowing money. We're not involved in shares which can go up and down. We are not subject to market forces. If there's a global crash in stock markets, it generally doesn't affect us. We invest in a sector that is vital to the UK economy, in that renewable energy now contributes around 48% of the UK energy mix, i.e. there's lots of press and things saying, well, wind turbines aren't working today, but nonetheless, it contributes about 40%, 48% of UK energy, which is huge. And just to give you a little feeling, during winter months, UK comes very, very close to maxing out its energy capabilities. And in fact, we become very reliant at that point upon importing energy from France and from Norway and other countries. So it's about energy reliance. Yes, of course, it's green, and it's part of the move to a carbon-free environment, which is great. But even if you set that aside, it's a product that is asset-backed. We have clear and defined and predictable revenue streams from grade A counterparties in government and the electricity companies. If the wind blows and it rains, we create energy and we sell the energy. I guess the final part is, when we talk about risk, is there's obviously a risk to the individual assets, and therefore the assets are insured, and they're insured against all risks. So therefore, if we have a problem with a wind turbine or a hydro site, then we can call upon the insurance not only to fix it, but to replace the revenue we have lost. So from a risk perspective, we mitigate the risk to the greater degree that we possibly can.
Excellent. And obviously, just talking about the underlying assets, can you just either of you just run through exactly what's in the portfolio, and whether we have any plans to expand on that?
Yeah, do
100.
you want me to kick off? Well, just to sort of further add to what Ian was just saying there, just to sort of follow up on it. Not only are the assets insured, certainly the wind turbines that we've got, the operation and maintenance contracts that we've got cover losses as well, to an extent where we actually had money paid back into our bank accounts before I'd got the report from the O&M contractors that something had gone wrong with the turbines. They cover anything that they look after on a routine basis. If it fails, they accept it. So that's outside the insurance as well. And as I say, the first time I heard about that something was wrong with the turbine was when we had money paid into our bank account for the 7 days that the turbine was down, that they fixed it. So, you know, it does work. And again, you know, that is something else that in sort of looking after the turbines, it is key. In terms of what we've got 14 wind turbines in the portfolio, all in Northern Ireland. Why Northern Ireland? Well, the subsidy that we get there, and Ian mentioned government-backed sort of subsidies briefly just before. Two different types of subsidy that were available to us: a renewable obligation certificate and a feed-in tariff. All our wind turbines in Northern Ireland qualified for the renewable obligation certificate, ROCs, and in Northern Ireland you got 4 ROCs for each turbine. If you move that turbine from Northern Ireland and put it in England, say, you get 0.9 of a ROC. So decision to be made to go to Northern Ireland was they earn 4 times the subsidy that we get in England. What that means is that 70% of the revenue on the wind turbines in Northern Ireland is basically a subsidy. That fluctuates slightly, and certainly when the electricity prices went up, that changed. But what it meant was that, you know, that is almost 100%. It's 99.9% guaranteed. We modelled it going up by RPI on an annual basis, and it's exceeded that every year. But what it means is if there are differences or changes in electricity prices, it only affects 70% of what we gain on revenue anyway. So that's mitigating risk constantly. So whilst we look at electricity prices, what we try and do is lock in so we know what we're getting. Again, sort of future-proofing it slightly. So we may have lost out occasionally when the prices skyrocketed, but we knew what we were getting, and it did what it needed to do. So we were mitigating the risk on the product there. We've got 2 hydro sites. One has been operating now for 7 years, and hydro is fantastic. If you pick the right site and you do the right things, manage it properly, it just sits in the background, ticks away. We know it rains. That's up in the west coast of Scotland. It definitely rains up there. And the second site is fully built. We've had a slight issue due to COVID and work not being completed by SSEN up there, but we are looking at options to get that connected, but that's another megawatt site that is ready to go as soon as we can. We have an operating anaerobic digester in Northern Ireland, again, renewable obligation certificate, so it's qualified for ROCs. We agreed to do that after a good couple of years of our developer there persuading us, meeting the farmers. Northern Ireland is set up for this sort of thing. Most of the feedstock for an anaerobic digester is silage, and anyone that's been to Northern Ireland will know that outside sort of 3 cities, most of Northern Ireland is feedstock for anaerobic digesters. So the farmers that we've engaged with there have actually changed their model of farming to grow the feedstock. So that is working very well as well, and that's been operating now for almost 4 years as well. So that is the 3 assets that we've got in the portfolio at the moment. Ian mentioned solar before. As soon as we can, we'd like to sort of complete the package, if you like, and have solar as well. And then it covers all the bases. You know, it will rain, the sun occasionally will shine, and it definitely rains. So we're covering all the renewable options in the portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the questions the sort of sales team always get asked is, how long are these ROCs in place for? And do you think, a couple of questions really on the back of that, do you think that climate change is going to change anything going forward for our proposition? And do you think the government could make it easier or harder? General question, but it's one that we get asked.
Yeah, well, the renewable obligation certificate runs out in 2037. So, we've got another 10 years of the ROC subsidy feed-in tariff, slightly different. But what we've been lacking in recent years is sort of a definitive plan from the government. What would make it easier is actually sort of putting something in black and white that we can hang our hats on, whether it's good news or bad news, but at least we can plan for it. What I think everyone understands is there is a place for renewables, well, forever, really. We are not going to rely on fossil fuels forever. It will back up nuclear. We need it. We're all going to be, or our children will all be driving around in electric cars. We can't do that at the moment with the power mix that the government is currently doing. The subsidies have stopped now for new builds. So unless you're doing something that's going to sort of knock whole percentages off the UK mix of energy, you're not going to get a subsidy. But that's going to have to change at some stage in the future. There is not enough money for the government to build renewable sites for all of us. So they will have to incentivise in some way private money to get that job done for them. Electricity prices, we are looking beyond the feed-in tariff, the ROC subsidy ending in 2037. We are starting to get some companies that we work with that are prepared to sort of state what they think it's going to be 10 years ahead. I mean, it's going to be more expensive than it is now. There's no doubt in that. We've had the spike, it's come back down. We're almost back to where we were before the issues 3 or 4 years ago. So, it's a relatively straight line under normal circumstances, the energy prices, with some blips that, are unforeseen. The ones that they can see, they're starting to work into a 10-year model, and we are looking at that. What can we do about that? Well, we're already repowering some of our turbines. Our first one was completed this year. What does that do? Well, certainly in wind, you're looking at about a 25-year lifespan for a turbine if it's well looked after. That certainly would take us, when we built them, to the end of the ROC subsidy period in 2037. The one that we've built this year, basically it's a different turbine, and what we've done is we've made it bigger. So the tariff or the subsidies work on sizes. The sweet spot that we saw was essentially a 250 kilowatt turbine. The new one that we've put up is 850 kilowatts. It's derated, so it's sort of notched down to 250 kilowatts. So it still qualifies for the ROC subsidy. In 2037, when we're not worried about ROCs anymore, we can unpin it and it will, generate almost 4 times what it's generating now in export to the grid. So that is one of the things that we are planning to do with the remaining turbines that we've got in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I'd just add that the current policy from the government with the removal of subsidies doesn't actually preclude one from building a hydroelectric or a wind turbine site or any renewable site. What it does mean is you have to take a different view of it. So, for instance, 10 years ago, we would have built, to produce 2 megawatts of energy, we would have built 8 wind turbines. No, we would build 1 wind turbine, which actually makes a lot more sense, because 8 wind turbines would cost us 9 million quid, whereas 2 megawatt turbine will cost us 2.5 million quid. So that there is a complete logic and sensible move towards the reduction of tariffs and the burden on the UK taxpayer by ensuring that what is built is viable and stands on its own foot. Can't say 2 feet because there's one, but so that there is a lot of sense to it. I think what Andrew was qualifying there for everybody is that we are already, even though we are 12 years away from the end of ROCs, we are already future-proofing our portfolio to ensure that these turbines are still viable. Now, you may ask, well, 12 years time, 15 years time, you know, are you guys going to be around? The point is that if these turbines, they will always have a value, they will always sell electricity into the grid. But if you want to maintain the value of the turbines and therefore the asset base, then you have to future-proof them. And we are already on with that process.
And I think that's really important for advisors to communicate that with their clients. So just dropping back to something about AD, Andy. I know that we've got plants over in Northern Ireland and why they're there. And we know, again, one of the comments we get is, well, it hasn't always been successful in the past. How do we mitigate that with our plants to how do we manage them, and what do we put in place to make sure that they are successful?
Well, one of the sort of key things is sort of Northern Ireland's quite a traditional place, and you know, there's a lot of succession planning in farms, and fathers hand over to sons, etc. The operating site that we've got now, that a decision we made a couple of years ago, because it was working, rather than building a second independent site, we're actually reinforcing the site that we've got and sort of backing the success that has proved. But it's a big working farm. It's not sort of one man and his dog and, you know, 20 sheep. It's a proper piece of real estate. The succession planning in the farm, there are two sons. They are both farmers. They both work on the farm. They have been trained to manage it. So the day-to-day management and maintenance is done on the farm by the farmers from their office. We pay them to manage that. So if there is any issues with feedstock, which is sort of the big issue, if you run out of the fuel, you know, there are issues. With wind and all the rest of it, we didn't, you know, nature produces the fuel, but with AD, there was a risk that we've mitigated by engaging with the farmers. As I mentioned before, they've changed how they farm, and now it is producing the fuel stock for the anaerobic digester. There is also like a 6-month supply of feedstock. You know, they cut 4 times a year. The first cut is always the best, but it doesn't run out overnight. So you know, you can plan months in advance if they think, and they know their farm best, if there is going to be an issue, you're mitigating it months in advance. In the time that the berries have been managing the farm there was one issue sort of highlighted that there may be an issue, but there wasn't. You know, they sorted it. And it's quite a small community in Northern Ireland. They're all pretty close. They like helping each other in the main. So again, you know, there are ways of, you know, some people have more than they need. There are ways around it. So certainly in managing feedstock, which has been issues for other people in the past, in Northern Ireland, you're not putting it on a lorry and having to drive it 100 miles to get there, which would blow a model out of the water. It's, you know, a few miles if required, and we haven't got to that stage yet. So it was very careful planning and liaison with the farmers involved, that can they do it? So they do the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, I just add to that where we've analysed failures in the industry in the past, and the main reason that people with portfolios of purely AD have had issues is that they've leveraged against the assets at an unsustainable rate of interest. So, you know, none of these products blow the doors off in terms of profitability. The EBITDA is fine, they are profitable. But if you start borrowing money at 10, 12%, then eventually it's going to come back and bite you. And that's generally why AD has failed. So basically, people have over leveraged against an asset and then not been able to maintain the interest payments on the leverage. So the actual asset itself is fundamentally sound. It has an advantage over wind and hydro in that it's running 24 hours a day. So, you know, when we talk about a wind turbine, if it's running at 32, 33, 34% of the time, that's very, very good. Whereas an AD plant is producing energy all the time. So as an asset class, it's great. Just to give you a feel, we're obviously conscious of the fact that we need a diversified mix of assets in our portfolio. And AD represents less than 20% of that portfolio. And that's kind of where it will stay.
Okay. Good answer, thank you. We've had a question in from a regular contributor from Chris. And it's just on the turbines and replacing them as the technology makes them more efficient. He said, where are the turbines built? Is it in the UK or is it tossed to get them from elsewhere? I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, it's a variety of places, Andrew. It depends which one we buy.
Yeah, okay.
But you know, Vestas turbines come out of Denmark primarily.
Yeah.
We try to steer away from Enercon are out of Canada, I believe, Andrew.
Yeah.
And we tend to steer away from the, let's call them, Eastern Asia turbines. So we stick to what we sometimes we'll pay a little bit more, but we like to have the manufacturer reasonably close at hand.
Yeah, I can, to be honest, I can find out an answer to that. The trouble is that things built in this country tend to be quite expensive, and there isn't quite the sort of the history in doing it. I think I sort of saw the question. Yes, it is a potential something that the UK industry could and should look at to support us, because at the moment, yeah. None of our wind turbines were UK produced.
Yep. Okay. So transparent then. So obviously we've looked at how Deepbridge started in renewables, and we've looked at the diversity in the portfolio with the different AD and wind and water. So the next big question that we always get asked is, well, how's the fund performed historically, and what are the main drivers of that performance?
Yeah, so the fund performs exactly as it's meant to do. I think I mentioned earlier that it's not going to blow the doors off. It isn't meant to do that. It's meant to be a reasonably risk mitigated investment which protects the client's money. So this is not about losing money, and offers an offset against inflationary things going on in the background. So over the past 5 years, we've performed at around 3.6%. I do expect that to improve. Not by any great margin, but I do expect it to improve. Just something we have going on at the moment is we are currently consolidating. We have a number of separate renewable energy companies from historical EIS days and from individuals who have invested in a suite of assets and either now passed away or changing their strategies. So we are currently consolidating into our main BR company, I think 8 wind turbines, hydro site, and some other assets, which will increase the base that we have. The repowering, as Andrew mentioned, we've repowered 1 turbine to date, and the effect on performance of that turbine has been quite dramatic. So the plan over the next 3 years will be to repower the rest of the turbines. I think we have 1 that's not suitable, and 1 we're not actually quite sure why it ever got planning permission in the first place, but it did. And it's unlikely that they will give us planning to repower it. However, we do have planning on a number of turbines and planning going through on the rest. And just the repowering itself will dramatically increase both the asset value and the performance. So we would expect that 3.6% to improve as we go forward, but certainly not go backwards.
I think it's one of those products where you can safely say it does exactly what it says on the tin.
It does.
You've got that 2-year hurdle. So again, we're coming up to stuff in the budget and end of tax year, and I think the sooner you can get that 2-year time ticking, then and you get all your ducks in order, then the easier the product will transition into a portfolio. So one of the things, again, we always get asked is how do we value the assets in the to really ensure transparency and accuracy? How do we value? How often?
Andrew, do you want to do that?
I missed, you sort of blipped out it. If it's about valuations, so the estate planning service gets valued twice annually, 1 externally and 1 internally. They value it sort of on a discounted cash flow going forward. So, what is the future generation revenue generation on that. So on an annual basis, we have an external organisation. It's been KPMG in the past who look at it. So in addition to the sort of the power prices that we speak to, it's a good sort of reset on what's happening in the renewable market going forward. So that's how they do it. In terms of sort of transparency, you know, I can give data to 10 minutes on every single asset that we've got. So, you know, we only invest in renewable assets. So as Ian mentioned, you can go and touch and hug them if you want. But, you know, I can give data to 10 minutes. So it is totally transparent on the valuations, and it is only valued on the portfolio that we've got.
Yeah, we also, so KPMG do the valuations annually for us, and we take the lead from that when we do our internal one. But in addition to that, RSM do the accounts and audits across the product annually. So we have to justify our actions and what we do to RSM. So we have grade A counterparties in terms of validating the products and the performance and the accounts.
Excellent. Okay. And I think you mentioned already other opportunities in the UK and how Deepbridge are positioned to take advantage of those. Do you see any particular sectors that we would like to get into to put into the portfolio?
I think first and foremost, we have a clear and present group of opportunities within our existing portfolio, namely repowering our existing portfolio, our existing wind turbines. We are going to probably end up spending a little bit more on energising the big hydro site we've got in Scotland. We think we've found a very credible solution, which would be a direct wire into a facility on the west coast of Scotland, which would mean we'd get more than selling it into the grid, but they would be paying less than buying it from the grid. So it's kind of a mutually beneficial approach. So we will need to invest some money in that. We have secured a number of AD engines in Northern Ireland, which already qualify for ROCs. So I don't think we intend to go and build a lot more AD, but what we can do is currently the gas produced by the current AD plant is in excess of what we can currently put through the engine we have there. So we would look to supplement that with another engine just to take advantage of what we've already built. So proportionately, considerably more valuable, that we've got to spend a lot less to get twice the energy. So I think that's the opportunity. I know that Andrew sees a considerable number of opportunities coming across his desk throughout the year, particularly distressed assets. So we have a number of wind turbines which haven't been particularly well maintained or looked after, with a distressed debt position. So we will take advantage of those when we come along. In terms of wind onshore, look, we're never going to get involved in wind offshore. No. It's way out of our league. We're talking about billions. So that's out of our league. But wind onshore has been almost impossible for the last 5 years or so, Andrew, I would say, at least. So we have focused in on existing assets and repowering of assets. There's a wind farm. If anybody goes to Cornwall in the summer, you will know not too far from Rock, there's a big wind farm you drive past, which has been there for 20 odd years. Ideal opportunity to acquire it and then repower. So that's the future at the moment. You can now apply for planning permission for wind turbines onshore in the UK, but it remains difficult to see it through, as the local community has the right of veto and nobody wants a wind turbine in the garden. I'm sure everybody who lived near coal mines historically that powered the UK, who didn't have a say, would have said no to coal mines. But look, it's still a difficult environment to gain planning permission for new sites. So our focus remains upon taking existing assets and repowering.
Brilliant. Okay, good answer. Just conscious of time, because they've got a couple of questions come in as well. So I just wanted to, it's a bit of a general question, but it's really, how should advisors best communicate the benefits and risks of renewables to their BR planning clients? I think as a team, we sort of position it that if you are going to look at renewables, give us a look, because we have got a robust product, we've got experience in the sector, and use it as a diversifier with others of our peers to you know, hit the numbers
Yeah,
for
look,
the advisor. Yeah.
look, I had a great conversation with a potential investor earlier in the week, and he's heavily into property. And taking away the fact that this is obviously a carbon-friendly green investment, which does hold some sway, and people are quite interested in that sector. But taking that away for a start, it can be directly compared to property investing in as much as you have a tangible asset. You know, you have predictable revenues. And when I say predictable revenues, the difference between renewable energy and property investing is if you have a suite of houses or an office block or a shop, then you need a sitting tenant to create revenues. If you don't have a tenant, I beg you all to go and walk around your local town and show me how many commercial properties are empty. If you don't have a tenant, yes, it sits on your balance sheet as an asset, but it's not generating income. Renewable energy assets generate income. It's predictable income. There's no gearing. It's a tangible fixed asset with insured risk. So from an investor perspective, who are primarily looking to mitigate risk, protect what they've created over generations, and you know, hopefully not have to be hit with inheritance tax, then it is a highly credible, sensible, stable asset that is uncorrelated to world market forces.
That's a great analogy. Excellent. One of the questions that one of my colleagues, Donna, had this week was from an advisor, and he was saying, well, but you know, depending on what happens in the budget, but certainly every advisor I've spoken to since the budget last year, this is one of the hot topics, and they want to know more about it. But the question was, if an advisor gives us a wave of business, have we got the capacity to handle that? I think I know the answer, but
yeah, I think I've alluded to it already. As it stands right at this second, not including a number of assets that Andrew's currently assessing to acquire, we have about a £35 million capacity that we could deploy tomorrow morning. So you know, that's just sitting here right now. You know what? We Andrew and I could sit down and go through everything and start calling people, and we could probably double that. But there's no point doing that until we know we've got the money. So we'd rather not yank people's chains by telling them we're going to do something when we can't. But internally, we have £35 million worth of work we could be doing right now.
Yeah.
Wow, that'd be a good start. And one of the questions, again, we get asked a lot is, as we do with our EIS investments, all of the fees are levied on the investee company. Is that the same for
Yes.
ERE and renewables, and how does that impact on the client?
So, you know, historically, my experience in the US was that if I asked an investor to pay a fee to me for investing his money, I probably would have been laughed out of the room. Yeah. So it came as a bit of a shock to me when I returned to the UK and I realized that investors were paying for the privilege of investing. And I know that went against the market and I took a lot of criticism for it, but that was my belief. And my belief is that I act for the investor. And therefore, it's in the investor's best interest that if they invest £100,000, that £100,000 should go into the investment, and thereby they receive shares based on that £100,000, and obviously in EIS that they get 30% tax relief on £100,000, not 27% tax relief. So that yes, the investments are fee free to the investor. Obviously, we have to charge somebody, so we charge the company. So at the end of the day, the company ends up with the same amount of money, whether the fees come off before or afterwards. But it's still in the best interest of the investor to have all his money invested and thereby own shares on the amount they've invested.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Well, listen, I think we've covered a lot today. It's been really good. Just conscious of time again, so it just leaves me. I just want to thank you all for coming on these last 3 weeks. I hope it's been of use to you. Obviously, I think a lot of advisors and clients are waiting to see what happens in November. All I will say is that, you know, please contact Mike, Donna, myself, Terry, and Steve, and we can help you with any information, any illustrations that you need, or anything to help you make the client experience a lot easier. just thank you to Ian and Andy. I know you're very busy today. Just visit our website, www.deepbridgecapital.com, for our next event, which is on the 1st of October, when Donna is running a tax planning masterclass in Liverpool from 9 till 12:30 with some leading tax specialists. CPD certificates should be with you by the end of this week. Thank you again for your time. We look forward to speaking to you again soon. Have a great rest of the day, and take care.